Hi, Kirsten Lovett here, Shamanic coach at Now Moment Journey. And I thought I'd talk today a little bit about connection. So modern society, the world we currently live in, is much different than, our ancient ancestors. And just as a little, sidebar, I mean all of our ancestors, no matter what ethnicity you have or whatever. I'm talking about human beings. Um, so modern society is much different than how people lived a long time ago. And I thought I'd bring up just a couple things that I've learned and also, shall I say, downloaded or channeled from my ancestors. And some of this comes as a result of, if you're curious, of doing shamanic practices and practicing animism and just acting as if, and that's a whole nother subject in itself. But long story short, I just wanted to present kind of a big picture here first before I get into a subtopic of it. But if we look back to our ancient ancestors, not to copy exactly what they did in terms of like how they lived, because we live in the present moment right now, so we have to do, we want to go forward. It's not like we want to. There's a lot of people who think if we go back to looking back to what our ancestors did, that we want to copy the exact replica of how they lived, and that's not certainly the case, at least not in my opinion. So if we put that aside and just go back to very ancient times, like, even, let's say, Mesolithic or even Paleolithic, but I think even in Mesolithic, I think you would find that because people had to be so connected to their physical environment outside and just in general and just being in nature, I think when you need something to survive, there's kind of a much more of a motivation to want to have a relationship. And relationship can mean a lot of things. I mean, a relationship can be something positive, and a relationship can be something difficult, or it can be a mixed bag, or whatever. But it's still like a connection or a rapport or, something like that. And what's really hard to kind of talk about, even in a podcast, but I'm going to try to do it, is a lot of the stuff that I'm kind of talking about here is stuff that most people can't see it, and including myself. I mean, a relationship is, even if you have a relationship with your best friend, you can't physically see the relationship itself as if it's an object or some kind of shape or something like that. So you have to kind of apply that kind of mentality to what I'm talking about right now, which is relationship with parts of nature, or I'm just going to call it nature in general. And of course, that's a huge topic right there. But so, for example, like trying to have some kind of rapport with, maybe you're a water person. Here, let's just take an element as an example. Water's an element, and it's something, it surrounds the entire globe. So, like, a lot of people tend to have some kind of relationship with it. And of course, we need water to survive as human beings. But I think there's a lot of people through recreation or some kind of family hobby, or maybe they, if you're lucky enough that you grew up understanding some kind of cultural ritual around water that's steeped in some kind of long-standing tradition, you're very blessed. But even if you're not, even if you don't have some kind of memory or tradition in your family or whatever or anything like that, a lot of people feel drawn to the water, for example, and they don't know why, but they just know that there's some kind of peace, right? So a lot of people, like I live in Florida, so there's a lot of people here who have a boat, and they, on the weekends they go out on their boat and they, have, whatever kind of recreation on the boat. But there's a lot of people who have what I would call kind of a quasi-spiritual relationship with water who just happen to live here in Florida. They wouldn't maybe talk about it like that. Maybe some of them would, but I think that that's something that at least people in America and in North America can kind of culturally understand, even in the modern day and age of where we're at right now, in terms of being severely disconnected from our natural world. But that's one positive thing that we do still have. So maybe just think of a man or woman who has kind of a serenity about maybe their time fishing, or where they get to kind of commune with nature, or maybe a hiker that gets to hike in the mountains and has kind of a moment or series of moments where he or she sees natural beauty or an animal or landscape that inspires some kind of awe, or it could be the opposite of awe. It could inspire a lot of things. Peace, awe, those are very different emotions. I would call those kind of remnants of what our ancient ancestors used to do every single day. So kind of just keep that in the back of your mind, like, when I'm trying to talk about this. Because there's some of you listening to this who already do some of the animistic practices that I've talked about or that other people talk about, because maybe you're already involved in energy work, or you're already involved in some kind of uh, uh, there's many words for it. Maybe you're involved in some kind of folklore, or maybe you're involved in some kind of pagan practice, or a shamanic practice, or a traditional knowledge practice, or you just happen to you grew up that way. So I'm going to pretend that you don't do any of these things, or you do very little of it, and so you're the kind of person that I'm addressing right now. So, when you think about how our ancient ancestors lived, as if they had to form some kind of relationship with elements, for example, earth, water, air, fire, etc. In some cultures there's ether and wood and various things like that, but we'll just talk about earth, air, water, and fire. And those are pretty much globally. I mean, you can't really escape those four elements. They're pretty much everywhere. So no one has a, shall we say, patent or copyright on those things. So when, at least not yet. Let's hope that never happens. So when you think about that, or maybe a better word is to feel into it, perhaps dial it back in your head and think to yourself, wow, can you imagine getting up every day and having a conversation with the spirit of water, or having a conversation with the spirit of air, or having a conversation with the spirit of fire, or having a conversation with the spirit of earth, or going into the forest and the trees kind of like giving you an update on what's going on and you talking back to them, or in a respectful way, kind of like an intel gathering or something, something where your purpose is to not just seek out information. Maybe that makes it sound too, clinical, but you're trying to kind of establish a rapport, and like you would with a person you were trying to meet and like get to know. So some of that involves getting information. Let's say you first meet somebody, you say, hi, how are you, and what's your name? I mean, that's basically gathering information, but it's also part of the pleasantries of getting to know, at least in this culture now, getting to know the person. So it's kind of like, if you thought of it that way, let's say every day you had to get up and go talk to your local tree and say, hey, what's going on with you? And maybe you would be able to listen back to that from that tree or from the area, or it could be a body of water. I really believe that this is what our ancient ancestors did, and over time, it stuck with them. This practice stuck with them through many millennia, and is still vaguely visible today. It's very hard to, seek out exactly where it's happening all the time. But I think when you look at it this way, it's not some crazy, tree hugger, hippy dippy stuff. This was like, this practice on a basic level was how people lived. And, to some extent, I mean, there was varieties and variations as to how that happened. And I don't want to exclusively make it like, oh, it was just with the elements. I'm talking about, it was pretty much with everything, I think. That's just where I'm at with it right now. So, for example, how would one in our day and age, and back to where we are right now in modern society, we're very fortunate in some ways, and we're very not so fortunate in other ways. And I think one of the neat things about where we're fortunate is there are still remnants of how our ancient ancestors lived. And sometimes I think that that's what people are looking for, that they're not looking, like I said, we're not looking to replicate and live exactly like our ancient ancestors did. We're not looking for that. At least I don't think we are. What I think we're looking for is the connection they had with their environment, because it's so many things. Let me tell you how it came up. For me, it started off with grief. Or at least I don't know, reclaiming is kind of a overly charged word, but I guess I renewed my sense of talking with the earth and listening and trying to grapple with some really hard emotions about almost 15 years ago, and with a very important person who had passed on at that point. And for some reason, when this person passed on, it just really catapulted me emotionally into seeking out. And of course, I talked to people, but for some reason, I just started like really needing to talk to the earth. And of course, the logistics of this was, I didn't go outside and because, let's face it, peer pressure, it's very hard for me to just walk around talking to nature outside in public. I think most people would have a little bit of trouble with that because it's just, kind of frowned upon. But, you can still have conversations in your head. And I think what I would do is I was kind of trying to psychically talk with trees or water, or usually it was, I tended to be drawn to water. But I'm talking about water a lot today. So that's kind of just what kind of pushed me into it. There were some other things that were happening at the time that I still find very difficult to talk about, so maybe I'll find a way to talk about them later. But I think that was kind of one of the biggest motivating factors. I think sometimes when you have something in your life that happens that like kind of pushes you in a direction where you kind of seek out an answer somewhere, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in this whole new world. And so what am I trying to say by that? I'm saying that something quote unquote negative, like, or really horribly uncomfortable that I wouldn't wish on anybody, which is losing somebody who's important to you. It's always hard for everybody, right? I mean, it's a part of life, but that doesn't mean it's easy, and it doesn't mean it's fun, and it doesn't mean it's, as difficult as one of the most difficult things to do in life. But what was really cool about it was it really catapulted me positively into this whole world of, oh, wait a minute, I can talk to a tree, and I can listen, and the tree's going to talk back to me at some point. It might not happen right away, but at some point I might hear something or feel something, depending on, how I receive the information or the feeling or the energy or whatever it is. And it's not just trees. It could, like I said, it could be, some people are attracted to stones. And I'm kind of glad I've drifted into stone territory, because I think I'm actually, right now I'm talking to you and I'm holding some crystals. And so, again, I want to rewind it back to our ancient ancestors. As I hold these crystals, I think, one of them in particular I associate with a certain kind of energy. Maybe I'll go into that some other time, but it's very specific kind of energy. And I'm engaging with this crystal right now in my hand as I hold it, in hopes that it will help me communicate better to you all in this podcast. And you're probably listening to this going, what is she trying to say? Well, yeah, I'm trying to say a couple things in this podcast, and I thank you for bearing with me, because sometimes it's a little difficult. But sometimes when we look back in history and we look back to especially our ancient ancestors, they have some great wisdom for us. And we desperately need this wisdom right now, because I'm sure you've noticed that the world and the way that we're using up natural resources, and it's not just you and I, but the way the system is designed to use up natural resources, and that's a whole nother topic in itself, of course. But anyway, it's not good. It's not good for humanity. It's not good for the plants and animals. We need to change, right? We need to change for the better. And so my way of dealing with this, besides, there's a lot of external things that everybody can do, like, things that you could pretty much look up any environmental organization and just go to their webpage and just, see what the recommendations are. That's pretty, kind of a no-brainer. What isn't a no-brainer is some of the stuff that I've been trying to seek out. And of course, it isn't just always about, climate change, but I think even if the climate change wasn't happening right now, I think I would still want to live this way. I would still want to live with my heart opening up more and more as I practice more and more, to engage in some kind of conversation with, some people call them plant spirits, or some people call them not just plant spirits, animal spirits, and then I'm holding these stones right now, so there's stone spirits as well. And so I think some of these basic but really primordial elements, or shall I say components, such as plants, animal, stone. There's no cultural appropriation going on here, because if you go to any ancient culture worldwide, some configuration of those three components are utilized in some way, in a way where the humans in the actual culture are engaging with them. And sometimes they're used for medicine that's actually for the physical body, or sometimes they're used for some kind of spiritual, initiation or something like that, or both. Sometimes it's for many other reasons that I'm not aware of. But you could pretty much go anywhere in the world. And so one of the things I've been trying to do for quite some time now is find something that wouldn't be appropriating other cultures, but that it's common to most people, if not everybody. And for right now, this is what I came up with. And of course, it wasn't completely just me coming up with these three things. I had to seek out some helping spirits through my own practices and practices that I've been taught, or that I've devised or downloaded from helping spirits. So it's not an easy task, but I feel that these three components of animal spirits, plant spirits, stone spirits, and today I wanted to hold these stones while I was talking to you, these crystals, I should say, because I thought it might enhance that as well. But what was interesting is we ended up talking more about water, but sometimes when you hear these things about people saying, "Oh, crystals are so new age," or your aura this or that, and that's new age, this and that. Sometimes those impulses that came up through the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s of the late 20th century that were coined and made popular in pop culture, sometimes there's some value and some actual, historical kind of fuel behind it, because people want that connection. And sometimes it'll manifest itself in some, pop culture phenomenon, So just because somebody's working with crystals, or just because somebody's working with animal spirits, or just because somebody's working with plant spirits, yeah, there's a variety of different ways to do that. And there's very specific traditions that have their own specific ways of doing things. But I think, just try to be, a little discerning about not blowing it off as some kind of pop culture phenomenon or some kind of hippie thing or whatever. Because there's usually somewhere behind one person saying, "Oh, that's so hippie," or, "that's so new age," is you'll find out down the road that crystals were used in actual traditional cultures for shamanic healing, and still are. And stones are used in many traditional cultures that are still practicing today for actual healing. And so, that doesn't sound too new age to me. So, there's a variety of different possibilities. And usually it's always more complicated than you might see in, on social media, or in print, or in any kind of pop cultural phenomenon. So what I wanted to end with today is just the beginnings of trying to talk about these basic, but not nearly simple. They're not basic in the sense that they're commonplace in a very boring way. No, quite the opposite. They're basic in a very, like, building blocks. Building blocks are important to have any structure stand firm, right? So look at these as building blocks that are absolutely essential if you want to connect for whatever reason, maybe you have a reason for connecting with the outside world in terms of nature or whatever, because you're in pain or something, or you're going through something really hard emotionally. I think it's really comforting to know that these forces are out there, and they're things that are rarely taught to us they're not taught in school, and they're really not talked about very much, I don't think at all. But um, there's many forces in nature and spirits. I'm not saying they're all lovely and benevolent 24/7, because they're not. There's a mixture of different kinds, just like people, There's a lot of nice people and there's a lot of not so nice people. So it's the same thing with, various energies out there, okay? But I think to know that not everything in nature is, against us as people. In fact, there's quite a few things in nature that need us to be friends with it on a very personal level. And it's not just for one person to decide. It's not for me to decide how you engage with nature. I can kind of guide you towards various ways that have helped me. But it's not, at the end of the day, it's up to you. So, and that's a part of spiritual sovereignty, which I think belongs to each person. So, I just wanted to kind of introduce this idea in case it's new to other people, just that there's this whole world. It's an unseen energy, to the visible eye, that is. But sometimes when people seek out things like plant spirits or plants in general, maybe they just start a garden or something. Or even people who love pets, sometimes they get into animal spirits after that. Or people who love crystals and they have no idea why. I'm one of those people. Sometimes I sit there and I go, why do I like, and not just crystals, I love stones, so many different stones. And I work with them almost every day. I may not, sometimes I don't even realize I'm working with them, but I have them on me, so I know they're there. And there's probably a ton of information that I haven't even tapped into that, I need to find out more about that. But, I feel like these things, plant, animal, stone, are a really good connection to how to find our way into this world of nature and relationships. And it doesn't step on anybody's toes. You don't have to worry about appropriating any kind of ceremony or anything like that, because you're dealing at a very, building blocks level, which is a really ideal level to be at. I'm going to kind of end here for today, but I'd welcome any of your comments or questions. Just to let you know, a couple of things about what I'm doing, and also I have a Patreon with my sister, Celestial Tree, and my name is Kirsten Lovett, and I have my business page is on Facebook is Now Moment Journey. But we have a Patreon called Shamanic Earth Medicine, and it's a really great community of people who are really interested in kind of learning about these things and also experiencing firsthand various ceremonies and various shamanic journeying methods. We talk about plant spirits. We talk about a variety of different traditions and cultures. Sometimes Nordic, sometimes it's plant spirit based, sometimes I've done various ceremonies around a candle ceremony that I was able to download from having a rapport with my medicine bundle. And this is all based on a total of 15 to 20 years experience with shamanic, various types of shamanic practices. My sister Celestial Tree is also very skilled in shamanic dreaming, so if you're a dreamer, you would definitely love a lot of her teachings. And she's also teaching many classes right now about Nordic animism. And also, I just recently did a tutorial on the tobacco spirit, the sacred tobacco spirit. And that's about a very respectful plant-spirit relationship. And we have a variety of levels of patronage, so you can join at the $1 per month level, you can join at the $5 per month level, or you can join at the $15 per month level. And they have various rewards to them. The $5 per month level is quite good in that you always get to participate every month in a ceremony facilitated by either myself or Marissa. That's once a month. And at the $15 per month, you get class discounts as well as the ceremony, of course. And then also you get to ask one of us a divination question where we would ask our helping spirits on your behalf based on whatever your question is. Submitted to us before the 5th of the month. So, and that's just kind of a, basic rundown of what we offer. But we're trying to present ways of shamanically engaging with the world and animistically engaging with the world to get people to learn these techniques and also to be able to use it in their own lives, in their own everyday life. That's something we really try to focus on, is ways that you can do things in your own life. Because sometimes some of these practices that you might learn in various other areas or from other people or various other locations, it's very location based, and it's very hard to kind of come back to your own house, wherever you live, or your apartment, and figure out a way to make it work for you where you live. And that's a whole nother story. I should talk a little bit more about that sometime. So anyway, but our Patreon is www.patreon.com/shamanic earth medicine. I would also like to encourage you, if you're looking for like just some, more YouTubes and free stuff, go to my link tree, which is www.linktr.ee/now moment journey. And I've got stuff on there. I've got a variety of things. I've got a Facebook group that where we're talking about Nordic animism and discussing animistic practices, like which offerings to do on what day, according to a scholar who wrote a book about Nordic animism. And we meet once a month, and that's a free group. So that's totally free. So you could check that out if you like, if you are interested in that sort of aspect of animism. There's so many different ways to do animism. I also have, a lot of YouTubes on there that you can watch for free. I have a YouTube channel you can click on from there. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest, and a couple other places. And so you can just, I also have a quiz that you can take that's totally free called Are You an Animal or Plant Spirit Archetype quiz. And that's also in line with a future course that is coming down the pike very, very, very soon called Getting to Know Your Stone Spirit Family. So you'll probably be hearing me talk more about stones and crystals, or at least trying to weave them into the conversation like I did today. And, we hope to see you in any one of those places, at the Patreon, at the Nordic Animism group. You can check out my YouTube channel, which is Now Moment Journey. And hope to see you very soon. Take care.